Okay, hello folks, this is Sullla here once again. I had a request in the last video for me to go through and look at the patch notes for this most recent patch. This is the Thresh patch, even though Thresh has not been released yet. So I'll go ahead and do this if people like this. I'll see if I can do this for other patches. We'll see what the feedback is, but I'll go ahead and take a few minutes to go through this one as it was requested. And guess what? I do actually read the comments on the videos as they get posted, even if I don't reply to them. Alright, what do we have here? Thresh has not been released yet. He'll be out soon. That's fine with me. I actually do not look forward to the champion releases. I feel like Riot releases champions too quickly. They've said they're going to a 3-week release schedule, and I think that's a good idea. The 2-week release schedule they've had for most of the life of this game is clearly not enough, because oftentimes when the champions come out, they're either really overpowered or they're very, very underpowered, one or the other. So anyway, I'm fine with Thresh not coming out. Okay, other changes. Let's go through and look at the changelog. Alistar getting buffs. Alistar was over-nerfed in previous patches. He dropped completely out of competitive play. They're increasing his base movement speed. That's not a huge deal, but it does help him a little bit because Alistar is played most often as a support or jungler. A little bit of extra movement speed helps. 325 is actually the lowest movement speed now. It's the lowest base movement speed in the game. That was one way I believe he was nerfed. So he gets a little help there. But this is the big one. They increased the range on his headbutt. They over-nerfed this skill in the past. This is a big, big buff to Alistar, and he really needs it. We'll see if this gets him played more often, but this is a much-needed change. They over-nerfed the range on headbutt previously, and now it's being put back to where it was before. So, nice change. Amumu, this is a relatively minor nerf to Amumu. He's been getting played a lot. I expect that there will be further nerfs to Amumu because he's been being used in competitive play a lot. This is his passive Curse Touch. Reduce the MR reduction on his auto attacks at later levels. Instead of 15, 20, 25, 15, 25, 35. This is relatively minor. It's not that big of a deal. So I don't see this really changing that much. I mean, it's a modest little hit, but it doesn't really change that much. Annie has gotten a couple buffs here. Disintegrate. They reduced the mana cost, and they actually reduced it quite significantly. Disintegrate is Annie's range skill. This is her Q. They reduced the cost. Starts at the same cost, but they greatly reduced the scaling. Now it's 80 at max rank instead of 100. That's actually a big deal. That's a significantly less mana to cost, so that will help her. Annie has not really been seen in competitive play in a long time, and not really played much in solo queue either. This in and of itself will probably not be enough to see Annie played more often, but it is a pretty big help to her, just so that she doesn't, if she uses her Q to harass instead of last hit, she won't run out of mana nearly so quickly. 100 is quite high these days. This is another sort of example of how Annie's kit is a little bit out of date. When League of Legends first came out, the mana costs were significantly higher than they are today, and this is something that may be left over from that time. Anyway, quality of life buff. Incinerate, the targeting cone, is now attached to Annie. Some weird stuff would sometimes happen when you targeted with that skill. And Molten Shield, they cut the cooldown and also cut the duration. This is still a buff. Cooldown of 10 seconds, duration of 5, instead of cooldown of 16 seconds, duration of 8. This is better because you want a shorter cooldown on Annie's skills, so you can cycle through her skills and get her stun up faster. So this is actually a buff, I would have to say, just because you can cycle through her skills faster. You can get up to her stun much faster. The old Molten Shield used to be on like a 30-second cooldown, and it would last for a while. They've been reducing the cooldown and also reducing the duration. Again, it feels like that's more useful. It'll be up more often, it'll be up more frequently, and it allows her to cycle through to get her passive stun up more often. Okay, Blitzcrank, minor nerf here. Increased the cooldown on his passive, his mana barrier. 60 seconds was probably too low. They increased it to 90. That's probably still not going to do that much to prevent Blitzcrank from being banned in most solo queue rank games, because this doesn't really hit his key target. If they really want to hurt Blitzcrank, they should increase the cooldown on his rocket grab. Also gives vision when it hits the target. That's just a quality of life thing. You should be able to see if you grab something, so it makes sense. Cho'Gath, Feral Scream, this is the same thing as Annie. There was some weirdness associated with the targeting cone on his Feral Scream, so now it should work better. Just a minor little thing. Corki, the Gatling Gun, they're reducing the mana cost. This is a relatively modest buff to Corki. Still, it will help. One of the problems with Corki is his kit has always been very similar to Ezreal, and in recent months in competitive play, everyone has just been playing Ezreal, and people have not been playing Corki. Now, Corki was also hit pretty hard by the Season 3 item rework. One big change in the Season 3 item rework was that armor penetration became much more widely available. Brutalizer upgrading the Black Cleaver, meant that there's a lot more armor penetration floating around out there. One of Corki's great advantages was he had armor shredding on his Gatling gun, but suddenly that wasn't that valuable anymore because you're seeing Talon and Pantheon and Kha'Zix everywhere, so all of them shredding armor. So Corki kind of got hit by the item change. So anyway, this is to make him hopefully more viable. We'll see if it does, but that's the logic there. Diana was overbuffed in the past. She was the strongest AP mid. The Korean scene in particular was playing her or banning her in literally every single game. She was then nerfed in the patch before this one, and she was over nerfed. All of her skills were hit. Way too heavily nerfed, she became useless, and so now Riot's reverting some of those nerfs and trying to find a happy medium. Anyway, they increased the shield duration on her W, and they've reverted back the cast range on her ultimate, her Lunar Rush. That makes sense. Reducing the range. Range nerfs are one of the hardest things you can do to a champion. Reducing range on skills is a very big deal, so they're just reverting that. And Diana will probably see a little bit more use. All right, Evelynn. Evelynn needed to be nerfed in this patch. Eve and Kha'Zix are the two strongest champions in the patch version before this. Both of them were very much overpowered and had serious problems with their kit. So they both were getting nerfed in this patch, and deservedly so. Eve, they're increasing the mana on her hate spike. This is a big deal because her hate spike is the skill she maxes first, and hate spike is on like a 2-second cooldown. So increasing the mana cost from 30 to 40 is a very big deal on this skill. That means Eve will have to manage mana much more closely. She can't just spam endlessly and not run out. And she had a little bit of trouble with her mana cost anyway prior to this. So this is a big nerf. The attack ratio decrease is more minor. I mean, it hurts, but this is the big thing, is increasing the mana cost. Ravage, again, reducing the damage, and again, reducing the attack damage ratio as well. Similar idea there, making it so the skill deals less damage at max ranks. So that's another just straight nerf. And then finally the ult. This is a huge nerf to Eve. I can't overstate this. Damage changed to 25% of the target's current health instead of their max health. Giant nerf. Gigantic nerf. Really big deal. So in other words, Eve will not be nearly as good of an assassin as she was before. Look at this too. The cooldown greatly increased. 60 seconds to 90 seconds is just enormous in terms of how often she could use this. And on top of that, they reduced the casting range as well. And range nerfs are a big deal, as I said before. So Eve is really hit hard in this patch. But you know what? She needed to be hit hard. She was really too strong in these previous versions. I mean, what can you say about a champion who can run around the map invisible, can't be spotted by wards or minions, jumps out of stealth, hits you with Deathfire Grasp, hits you with ultimate, and then you die, and you can't really do anything about it. Runs out of stealth and blows you up in 2 seconds, and you're dead. And she runs around stealth too, so you can't see her coming. And also, so is really good at assassinating people 1v1, has this ult that was amazing in team fights, was on, with blue buff, and DFG was on like a 30-second cooldown. Just ridiculous. So, way too strong and correctly nerfed there. Ezreal, somewhat modest nerf here. Base attack speed reduced. That actually is kind of a big deal because of the way Ezreal's passive works. That means he'll be getting less, he gets bonus attack speed, so he starting at a lower value does hurt him. Again, this is an attempt to try to balance out Ezreal with Corki a little bit. Ezreal's still strong. I wouldn't say he's necessarily overpowered, but he is a strong choice in bottom lane, but he hasn't been getting played to the exclusion of all of their ADs or anything like that. So, modest nerf, probably a good idea. I'm glad they didn't go overboard on this. Ezreal's been getting a lot of nerfs recently, and this is just another one. Kassadin, let's see, Okay, that's just a bug fix. Katarina, they reduced her base movement speed. They are adjusting her passive. Kat's been getting hit with a lot of nerfs as well. Less bonus movement speed, so she won't be as fast. Kind of makes sense. Again, Kat's been getting a lot of nerfs. This is another minor one, but the effect of lots and lots of nerfs do add up over time. She is probably in a pretty good place with this in place. A strong option, but not overpowered. Probably like that. Kennen, basic attack has been retuned, so he's got a better auto attack. That's a very small buff. Kha'Zix, as I said, with Eve, one of the most overpowered champions coming up into this patch. So Kha'Zix needed to get nerfed, and he has gotten nerfed quite a bit. Damage reduced from Unseen Threat, slow reduced, so this is just a straight up nerf, less damage, less of a slow on his Unseen Threat. Taste Their Fear. This is the big deal, reducing his attack damage ratio. 2.4 attack damage ratio, pretty stupid. Obviously overpowered, way too high, so they're scaling that back. They're hitting his scaling, which was absurd once you built a Black Cleaver and a Bloodthirster on him. So they're scaling that back. I predict more nerfs for Kha'Zix in the future. This is not enough to stop Kha'Zix from being a really strong threat. He will still be able to jump again once he gets a kill in a team fight. So I expect to see more coming. This is not like Eve. Eve just got destroyed by these nerfs. Eve will likely drop out of competitive play, period, because she was hit so hard. Kha'Zix, I do not expect that to happen. Expect more nerfs to come in future weeks because people will still be playing Kha'Zix. This hurts, but not enough to get people to stop playing him. Lee Sin actually got hurt pretty badly in this particular patch, and I'll explain why. Iron Will no longer grants armor while active. That's a pretty big deal. So this is his W, I believe. So that's kind of a big deal. Lifesteal increased, but the increase is so minor it doesn't really matter. This is probably more just getting to round numbers, 25% instead of 21%. This is very minor. This doesn't really do that much to help. I mean, I guess it helps a little, but it's very modest. This is the big thing. Cripple, I believe this is Lee Sin's E. This is very big nerf. Slow amount reduced. The scaling, it gets back up to the same slow at max rank, but 20% instead of 30% at level 1 is a big deal. That's a big nerf. And then this is the crippling thing. Range reduced from 800 to 600. That's a huge deal. So much more difficult for Lee Sin in order to hit his slow on his cripple. He will be much more likely to have to hit his Q, his resonating strike, in order to slow them with his cripple. One thing that Lee Sins were often able to do is walk up to somebody and then cripple them with his E, or dash to them with his W, his Iron Will, W to them, and then cripple. This means that it's much more likely that he'll have to hit on a resonating strike in order to get the slow off on his cripple. I think that's what they're going for here, but still, this is a really big deal. This hurts Lee Sin a lot. Really big deal. And it's going to take Lee Sin players a while to get used to that, because 600 range is a lot smaller than 800 range in this game. Quite a big difference. Okay, Mordekaiser, same thing. They're fixing the targeting cone that we saw with some of the other champions. Same thing. Nami, again, Nami has not really been played much since she came out. Her kit's good, but it's very hard to use. She has a very high skill cap. She's one of the hardest supports to play. So they're trying to do some minor things to increase her playability. Increased her movement speed, helps a little bit. Certainly helps with chasing. This is the big thing, cooldown reduction. This is on her Q. This is her bubble, the one that puts people in a bubble. Again, this is a big deal because her Q is her 1-point skill. You put 1 point in it early and then leave it there. Dropping from 16 seconds to 14 seconds is a big deal because you're not going to max this until level 18. So having this skill up 2 seconds faster for most of the game is what? I guess that's about 15% faster. That actually is a pretty big help to her. So she'll be able to use bubbles more often. And they increased the speed of her ultimate. Her ultimate was very slow. People could often just sort of walk out, just sort of outwalk it, just walk away from it because it was so slow moving. This isn't a sort of a little quality of life buff that will help her. We'll see if Nami gets played a little bit more. Now, Rengar is similar to Diana in that he was stupidly overpowered. You had this champion who doesn't use mana, is purely cooldown based, has something that heals him for a percentage of max health like every 10 seconds. So you would have these Rengars just stacking health and then being split pushing and being 100% unkillable. I mean, literally unkillable. They could not be pushed out of lane. It was ridiculous. But anyway, Rengar was nerfed in previous patches to deal with that, and he was over nerfed. And now they're trying to revert that back and do the same thing as I said with Diana. Get him into a healthier place between stupidly overpowered and completely useless. Alright, so Bone Tooth Necklace. They're increasing the stat on that item slightly because people weren't building it. Well, they did back when he was overpowered, but not so much now. So they're buffing it to help make people buy the necklace. This is a bug fix. Savagery, the attack speed duration increased. So this is just, again, a straight buff. 4 seconds of attack increase instead of 3. Should help. And this is, again, another fix. the problem with this is the problem with Rengar's W. He healed for 10% of his max health, which again, you just build crazy amounts of health and it would be stupidly overpowered. They nerfed it from 15% to 10%. Now they're changing it to a flat amount, and that's probably better in terms of balance. Although if he can heal for 400 at level 18, that's still quite a bit, so we'll see. Then finally, buffing his ultimate a little bit. They are, let's see, they're reducing the initial delay on the stealth and then how long the stealth lasts. So I'm not sure what effect this all will have, but Rengar completely dropped off the map, and they're hoping to bring him back to a state where he's playable but not overpowered. And I have no idea if that will happen, but we'll see. Riven is the real question mark in this patch. I think that Riot does a pretty good job with their balance overall. However, sometimes they'll just throw out something that's just bizarre and it doesn't make any sense. I remember one patch where Vlad was in perfectly good shape, and then for no reason they buffed every single one of his skills and he instantly became crazy overpowered, and everyone was like, why did you do that? Why did you do that? So sometimes their balance team just throws out something that makes no sense, and that's what I would say this whole Riven thing is. Riven is not being used in competitive play hardly at all, and I think that Riven is probably fine. She might be a little strong for solo queue, but she's certainly not what I'd consider to be an overpowered champion, and yet she gets hit really, really hard in this patch. They're killing her health regen. They're just straight up halving her health regen, or almost halving it at the base amount, and then cutting it almost in half again on the amount per level. Again, I'm not really sure why they're doing this. Not sure that that's really that necessary. Maybe it's a little too high, but seems like a pretty big nerf there. Shield amount is getting a very minor buff, very minor. 10 at each rank. That's nice, I guess, but it's not enough to offset the huge penalty in health regen. And then this is Riven's ultimate. Cooldown hugely increased from 75 seconds up to 110. It's like, really? That means Riven at level 6's ultimate is 50%, basically 50% longer before it comes off cooldown. At the end, at level 16, it's almost the same, 50 against 45, but I mean, this really kills Riven's laning phase. Really kills her laning phase, and that's her strength as a champion, is her laning. She scales okay in the late game, but not great. And her team fighting has never been all that spectacular, just average. Her laning has always been her strength, and this really kills her laning really badly, killing her health regen and then making her ult on such a longer cooldown. So this will hurt Riven a lot, and I'm not entirely sure why this is necessary. So this one is the only real big question mark for me in this patch. I don't quite understand. Okay, other stuff. Shaco, bug fixes. Controlling the clone doesn't reveal him in buff. Fixed a bug that prevented him from casting Hallucinate for the rest of the game in certain circumstances. Okay, so bug fixes there. Not much to say. Syndra, when she came out, she was a joke. She was so weak. She was laughably bad. She was the worst AP mid in the entire game. She was Karma tier, if that makes sense. However, since then, Karma has been steadily getting buffs. She's been getting buff in patch after patch after patch. Syndra was perfectly fine prior to this patch, and yet she's gotten more buffs. Now increased range on Unleashed Power. I believe that's her ult. Increases the range at max rank. I think that's what this is. I could be wrong. I think that it's her ult. And then Scatter the Weak, this is her stun. This is the cooldown reduction at higher ranks. Again, this is her 1-point skill. This is her E. You put 1 point in this skill. So this doesn't help her that much because you generally keep it at 1 point for most of the game. But still, 12 seconds instead of 14. Again, with max CDR, that means you're looking at about 8 seconds or so on the cooldown for that. So again, these small buffs have been steadily piling up on Syndra, to the point where I think that she is actually really strong. I think she's one of the strongest AP mids in the game right now because she's just been buffed over and over and over again. Her kit is difficult to use, has a high skill cap because she's all skill shots, but her Q deals a lot of damage. Her W deals a lot of damage and has a high amount of slow attached to it. She has a stun. It's a skill shot stun, but you can technically hit more than one person with it. And her ult now deals a ton of damage and has great range. She's a burst casting mage. She's really good 1v1 in mid, and her team fighting is now much better. So I think we're going to see her in competitive play really soon. We haven't seen it yet, but expect to see it soon. She's been buffed too many times. She's going to be overpowered if she's not already. So if you want to master a sleeper overpowered champ, learn to play Syndra right now. I'm telling you guys, learn to play Syndra. It'll be a while until people catch on, because people still remember her when she came out and she was the most useless champion in the game. But The same thing, this has happened to other champs. It happened to champions like Lee Sin and Yorick, who are both horribly weak when they came out and were just a joke, and then were buffed into overpowered status. It's happened again to Syndra. So if you want to gain free elo, learn to play Syndra right now. It won't get banned, and people don't know how to play against Syndra. So I would learn her. Learn how to play Syndra and just exploit it for the next 6 to 8 weeks before people catch on. Okay, other champions, Talon. Talon was another champ who became overpowered with the Season 3 item rework, much like Kha'Zix. He got hit really hard in the last patch. He was nerfed into uselessness, and now they're fixing some of the nerfs. So, Noxian Diplomacy, notice how huge this buff is. Or no, never mind. This is a nerf here, never mind. They're reducing the bleed damage on Diplomacy, but I believe they're buffing other stuff here. Let's see, damage reduced. Fixed a bug fixes. Oh wow, no, they're still nerfing him. Okay, well then their balance team doesn't know what they're doing because Talon is already too weak and they're nerfing him further. Okay, so don't play Talon. Talon's useless. Over nerfed, totally useless. Don't play Talon. So they have just over nerfed him now to the point where he is back to where he was before the Season 3 item rework, which is he's too weak to do any damage. Play Kha'Zix. Does the same thing and is much better. Don't play Talon. He's been over nerfed. He's useless now. Don't play him. Udyr. This is a nice quality of life buff for Udyr. Udyr hasn't really dropped out of competitive play. He was used for about 18 months. He was always in the competitive scene. Always was a good choice, but slowly absorbed too many nerfs. Now they're trying to buff him a little bit. This is a buff to his W. This is a buff to... Oh no, this is a buff to his passive. Excuse me. This is his passive. Each stack on his passive now gives him extra 4% armor and MR. So at max stacks, which is 3, he gets 12% armor and MR. Little buff, probably won't do that much, but a nice little change to him. One change I've seen suggested is people think that when he's in bear stance, he should be able to run through minions. He should be able to avoid minion collisions because Udyr is really susceptible to getting creep blocked really hard, and he has no gap closer. I would like to see that in the future. I hope they do that. I think it's a good suggestion that in bear stance to be able to run through minion collisions. Maybe they'll do that, but it would be a nice change. Vi, it looks like Vi has a ton of bug fixes. There was a lot of wonkiness associated with her when she came out. She was the most recent champion as I recorded this video prior to... What's the new guy's name? Thresh? I still have no idea what he does yet. So there are a lot of bugs associated with Vi. They fix bugs. Fix bugs with Vault Breaker. Unable to cast spells. Stun duration. Shorter than intended. Increase the responsiveness for attacks. More bugs, more bugs. So they're fixing bugs. Before they decide to buff or nerf her, they're fixing bugs. She seems like she's fine to me, to be honest. Might need a little bit of quality of life changes to the way that her charge up, the way that her Q works. But, I mean, she seems like she's fine. I don't think that she's especially too strong or too weak. Maybe a little bit on the weak side, but need more time to evaluate. Need a chance for people to play around with her in competitive play more before making changes. So it looks like they're just going to do bug fixes for now and reevaluate after people get more time to play as her. Ziggs cooldown indicates when his short fuse is available. That's his passive, so just bug fix there. Jungle changes are making some changes in the jungle. What they're doing is they're making it so the big creep in each camp, the big wraith, the big wolf, the big golem, and double golems, making it so they are harder to kill and give more gold, but making the small wraiths, the small wolves, easier to kill. I'm not entirely sure what effect this is going to have. It shouldn't really change jungling that much. I guess it's a slight buff to certain junglers. Probably a little bit of a buff to junglers who are good at dealing damage to one target, like a jungle Nunu, perhaps, something like that. But the main effect is the junglers will be able to clear at roughly the same speed, would be my take. Probably about the same speed because the increased health on the big wraith largely cancels out the lesser health on the small wraiths. But they're giving more gold to the jungler, and this is necessary because the junglers really have been getting starved for gold. The jungle got harder to kill in Season 3, but the junglers didn't get any more gold, so they have not been in a good place. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see if this helps them out, but jungler is definitely a role that needs some more gold coming in, and I think that this is what it's intended to do. Okay, tons of item changes in this patch. Manamune just getting straight buffed. Interesting to see that. This helps champions like Yorick and Urgot, who build Manamune, and Kha'Zix actually has been building Manamune, I've seen. So I don't know. They're just straight buffing that. We'll see. Not sure that was needed. Archangel staff getting buffed. Not a huge buff, but a modest buff, increasing the Archangel Staff. Not too many people build Archangel Staff. It's an item that, even with the upgraded Seraph's Embrace, most people still don't seem to be building this item, so perhaps that will help. This is the big change, one of the biggest changes in the patch. Flask, increasing the cost. This is a straight nerf to Crystalline Flask. You do get slightly more health than Monoback, but that's offset by the cost being about 50% higher. Will people still keep building Flask? Yes, I think that they will. I think that mid laners and supports definitely still want Flask. However, hopefully we'll stop seeing just about every single solo laner in the game buying Flask, because you could start Flask, a ward, and 5 health pots, and then you're almost impossible to shove out of lane in the early going. Way too much sustain in the early days. See, the problem is, in Season 2, everybody started Boots 3 pots because it was the most useful start. You got the bonus movement speed, the 3 health pots give you sustain. So Riot's thinking was, okay, let's nerf the effect of boots. We'll increase everybody's movement speed, so you don't have to start with boots, so the boots don't really do that much. The problem was, as soon as they did that, everybody switched over to just mass sustain. Crystalline Flask, 5 health pots. Or some people starting 9 health pots in lane with a ward. I've seen that too. In other words, way too much sustain, impossible to push anyone out of lane. So they're trying to nerf the sustain, but I still don't think this is going to do that much. It will mean that you can't start Crystalline Flask and a Fairy Charm, as people were doing in some lanes. But you can still start Flask, a ward, and what, like 2 or 3 health pots? And I think that'll still be a popular start. So this is a nerf to Flask. It hurts it, but I think people will still keep building it. Crucible, this is just to prevent people from accidentally clicking on allied minions. There's no reason why you would ever want to use the Crucible active on a minion. I mean, I guess you could heal it, but it's just silly. So this is a nice bug fix. Last Whisper, nerfed, straight up nerf. Just 200 gold, what is it, about 150 gold more expensive. Again, too much armor penetration, Season 3. They need to increase the cost of that. They've already nerfed Black Cleaver once, now they're nerfing Last Whisper. One mistake that Riot made was they made armor penetration much too available in Season 3. So they're starting to revert that back, and that's a good change. Spovamp's now unique on Gunblade. I don't see that really changing much. If there's some effect there that I'm not seeing, I'm not sure what it is. Perhaps people can stack Gunblade and Hextech Revolver, maybe? I'm not sure. People don't seem to be building Gunblade much in Season 3. Iceborne Gauntlet / Frozen Fist. This is getting a straight nerf. This item was overpowered. It was much too good for the cost. It was basically as good or better as Trinity Force for much cheaper. They're reducing the slow duration. They're reducing the slow percentage. So just a straight up nerf. Item was too good. Philistone. Looks like this was a bug. It was supposed to give 5 gold per 10, but was actually giving 4 gold per 10. So supports will get a little bit more gold. That's good news for them. Home Guard now works immediately after purchasing it. By the way, Home Guard, they're going to have to do something about Home Guard. Home Guard has been getting abused in competitive play. In fact, most teams in competitive play have been building nothing but Home Guard boots. 5 Home Guard boots have been extremely common in competitive play. I think they will have to do something to nerf this item. It feels like it's this and the one that gives AD's extra movement speed when kiting are the only boots that anyone's buying. So they will probably have to do something about that later. Alright, Spirit of the Elder Lizard, Spirit of the Spectral Wraith. The Spirit Stones, the only Spirit Stone anyone is buying is the Golem one, because the Golem one gives health and it gives tenacity, and it's really good on a lot of tanky support junglers. No one has been buying the other two. Elder Lizard is the one that gives AD, and no one's buying it. Anyone who builds AD has just been building Wriggles and then going into Black Cleaver or Bloodthirster. So they're giving it 10% cooldown reduction. I'm not sure if that will help. When people could just buy, people could just go Wriggles and get a Brutalizer instead. But we'll see. Designed to help that item. No one was building it. It's not perceived to be very good. We'll see. Spirit of the Spectral Wraith. This is supposed to be the AP jungler item. Unfortunately, there aren't really any popular AP junglers right now. We may see Diana with these bug fixes, or with these buffs. We might see Diana come back as a jungler. And maybe she'll build this. I don't know. But at the moment, no one is playing AP jungler, so this item's not being used, and they're trying to buff it. They're making the AP higher, and they're making it so the cooldown reduction is not unique. So I guess you could build more than one of these if you wanted to. I guess so. I'm not sure no one would do that, but I guess you could. So I might be missing something with this, but I guess some it's not unique, so I guess that helps in some way. Sanguine Blade, it's getting buffed. I don't really care about the items that aren't on Summoner's Rift. I'm sorry, Dominion players. I'm sorry, Twisted Treeline players. I don't care. I'm really not interested. The game's balanced for Summoner's Rift. I guess it's getting buffed. Blackfire Torch. Looks like it's getting buffed. New recipe. Will the Ancients. Oh, now Will the Ancients going to build out of Lucky Pick. I believe that that's new. I don't think that the Lucky Pick was in there before. So that is interesting. This means that this is more of a support item now, that they're trying to make this more of a support item. So if you're playing support Fiddlesticks, this would be a very attractive item to go after. Or if you're playing a double AP team comp, it would still be useful. We really haven't seen too many. Will the Ancients has kind of fallen out of favor in Season 3, so perhaps we'll see more people building it. This is more of a buff than anything because gold pretends are always useful items. Twin Shadows is being changed to be more of a support item. They're decreasing the ability power, increasing the MR and movement speed. I think it's intended to be more of a support item, but we've seen it mostly built on AP mids. So that's probably the idea here. Banner of Command. No one builds this item. So I guess they're adding the 10% CDR. This is supposed to be a support item. This is the one that allows you to promote your minions, but no one builds this. I have not seen anyone build this item. I don't think I've ever seen it in even one game. So I guess they're trying to buff it. They want it to be more of a support item, so they're putting the CDR in there as well. Supports one CDR. We'll see. Maybe some team will pull it out for a split pushing strat, but I doubt we will see it in solo queue. Banshee's Veil getting a buff here. They increase the cost, but they also increase the health. This feels like a buff to me. 100 more health for 100 more gold. Yeah, that's a buff. 100 health is worth more than 100 gold. It's worth, I believe the price is around 200 gold. So this is more of a buff for Banshee. So this is to make it more attractive as an endgame item instead of people building Mercurial Scimitar. Ninja Tabi. This is a buff to Tabi, Ninja Tabi, however you pronounce it. 10% from all basic attacks rather than only champion basic attacks. Gangplank hates this because it hurts his parley spam. However, not enough people were building Ninja Tabi. They increased the cost by a lot in Season 3 and nerfed the actual effect. So they're reverting back the damage from all basic attacks instead of champion basic attacks. This is a pretty big buff to Ninja Tabi. People are still building it, but this is a big buff to it. Leandries. They're increasing the health, reducing the ability power. Not entirely sure what the effect of that will be. Not sure. Wish I could say. I guess they just wanted to juggle the stats around. Wooglet's Witch Cap. That's a Dominion / Twisted Treeline item. I'm afraid I don't know what to say about that. Or this. Sorry, I'm just not familiar with these items. Pickpocket. Now they'll display a buff timer, so you can see when you can get Pickpocket gold again. Twisted Treeline, they've changed the speed shrine in the middle to a relic. That's probably a good thing. That speed shrine I thought was a stupid thing. I always thought that was a silly thing to have in the middle of the map. I really am not a fan of the current Twisted Treeline. I like the old Twisted Treeline. I believe that they should have left the old map in the game and just added the new map. I'm still not sure why Riot feels like they have to take a map out of the game to put one in. Doesn't really make sense. You know, you have two maps. Why not use both? The new Twisted Treeline plays nothing like the old Twisted Treeline. It should just be called the Shadow Isles and be its own map. And just have Twisted Treeline, Dominion, Summoner's Rift, and the Shadow Isles. You know, have 4 maps, or 5 with the Proving Grounds. Why not have 5 maps instead of 4? I don't see any downside to doing this, having an extra map available. So they screwed the pooch pretty badly. Very few people seem to like the new Twisted Treeline, and they're trying to fix it. But I don't know. I think it's just a bad map. Sorry, I think it's a bad map. Co-op versus AI, blah, blah, blah. Added Darius bots, fixed bugs. Some people really like co-op versus AI. I do play co-op versus AI sometimes, but just for fun. Blah, blah, blah. Bug fixes. Added spectator chat callouts for a couple items. Not too much there. They're getting ready to implement the new rank system. If people are curious what I think that the new rank system is fine. Some people like it, some people dislike it. Doesn't really bother me one way or the other. Seems fine, not a big deal. Some people, I have the feeling some people will really freak out when they're in their placement matches to the next tier or the next rank. Other than that, basically the same thing. I don't see much of a difference. UI, fixing bugs, not much there. General turrets. Let's see. Changing the okay, so they're outlining the prioritization of minions. So they target player-owned minions first, then super minions, then melee minions, then caster minions. Is this new? This is actually kind of a big deal, because you never really knew in the past whether the tower would go after the melee minions or the caster minions first. I felt like it was kind of random. This is actually a pretty big deal. If it's saying specifically the tower will always target the cannon minions first, then the melee, then the caster. That actually is very important information to know, if that's actually the way it's going to work. I'll have to watch that and see that, see if that's actually functioning that way in games. Okay, this is actually a pretty big deal. You need to be aware of this, because it affects last hitting under tower quite a bit. Knowing the order in which the tower is going to shoot at them. Okay, that's key information to keep in mind. All right, what else did they do? Fix bugs. Minimap, yes, minimap. They've changed stuff on the minimap. That wards now have their own icon. They have a little ward icon on the minimap. Your teammates are in blue when they're recalling. Enemy teammate, people on the other team are in red when they recall. And it looks like people are outlined in orange when using teleport. I have not seen this in the game as yet. So this is a big deal. It's going to take a little while to get used to the changes on the minimap. Nice UI improvements there. Teleport also now colored based on enemy allied team. So teleport will be more visible on the minimap now. What else? Fixed bugs. We actually had this happen in one of our games, where certain spells like Ezreal's Mystic Shot could land an unintentional critical hit. We actually had this happen once when I was playing. Ezreal Mystic Shot got a critical hit right at the beginning of the game and did like 250 damage, and we couldn't understand what was going on. So apparently they found that bug and fixed it. Bug fixes. This is by the way, this is a nice little one here. You now have a few extra seconds to finish a kill streak if the target is the last member of the team alive. In other words, what this is Riot wants to see pentakills. They want to see pentakills in competitive play. So you get more time to finish off that pentakill if there's one person on the enemy team left. More time to finish this off. So this is them wanting to see more pentakills. That's what this is right here. And looks like that's about it in terms of bug fixes. So overall, good patch. I like nearly everything that they've done. I think it's pretty well done. My only real question is, I don't understand what they're doing with Riven, and Talon's being over-nerfed. Talon is going to be useless. So Talon's going to be useless. Syndra will be very strong in mid, as I said. Learn to play Syndra and just take advantage of it before people catch on. All right, I think that's all. Again, if you like this, let me know. I'll record more in the future. If this is a big waste of time, that's fine. I won't waste my time in the future, but people did request this, so I thought I'd go ahead and record it for you guys. Anyway, more announcements will come up next week. Until then, have a great weekend. See you guys later. Take care.